Hey guys, in this video I'm going to be talking about AI and its impact on Africa, exchange rates, and the fuel subsidy. If you're new to this channel, welcome to Coffee Economics. My name is Abe. Let's get into the news. So the first topic I'm going to talk about is how the Nigerian government has finally decided to float the exchange rate. So before, Nigeria had a pegged exchange rate. They used to fix the exchange rate at a certain value of 460 naira to the dollar. But at the same time, there was a black market happening that had a high exchange rate of around 700 to 800 naira that had an exchange rate of about 700 to 800 dollars. But at the same time, there was a black market with an exchange rate of about 700 to 800 naira to the dollar. So this is the first time in very long time that they've done a floating exchange rate. So initially that the quoted that the price would be between 750 and 775. But now at the publishing of this news article, the exchange rate was 664 naira to the dollar. Interesting news out of Nigeria. It's going to have some ramifications for Nigeria. Let me start with the good side of this. For one, it will make the black market die down, and people start doing a legitimate trade through financial institutions, which will be good for the nation in terms of how the banks operate, supporting jobs in that sector. But at the same time, there'll be job losses in the black market sector because there'll be no difference between getting your money from the streets compared to the banks. There's also going to be a bit of investor confidence because a lot of people thought that naira is overpriced at 460 naira to the dollar. By allowing it to be floating, people will sort of come to probably a level that makes more sense given the economic performance of Nigeria. But with that said, having a floating exchange rate has also got its risks. For one, because the naira is going to go down in value, I should say. Imports are going to be more expensive. And then at the same time, Nigeria is already facing issues with inflation. So this new economic strategy of floating the exchange rate is going to probably put some inflationary pressures on things that people buy. So we could be seeing fuel prices rising even a little bit more, foodstuff rising as well, and all other items that people buy. At the same time, this has also got an advantage that because the naira is got a lower value to the dollar, Nigeria's exports is going to be a little bit of a stronger value. With that said, Nigeria is still struggling with how it's raising its revenue. The industry is still struggling with issues around oil theft and plugging those holes. The agricultural sector is not yet strong because of issues around insecurity. So it is interesting policy at this time because they're facing multiple challenges at the same time. We've got high inflation, we've got high unemployment, and we've got low growth happening in Nigeria. Some people think that if those three factors are in play, it's not really a good time to have a floating exchange rate because it might make your economy not to be able to bounce back as quickly as possible. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in this space. The next story I want to talk about is also related to Nigeria. So the president has come out to kind of give a forecast of what's going to be the future of Nigeria over probably the next couple of years. He's saying that they've removed the petrol subsidy. I should say that the amount of money that Nigerians are paying for fuel was kind of very cheap. They were paying under $1 for fuel. I live in Australia, and the price we pay for per liter of fuel is about $1.77. If you put that to exchange rate, it's a little bit lower than $1.50 to $1.40 in USD terms. But still, their fuel was quite cheap, like probably less than 50 cents. So people in Nigeria had really good fuel rates, but people got used to living with such cheap fuel for such a long time. Now removing it and getting the fuel price to closer to be $1 US instead of less than maybe 50 cents or 30 cents or 40 cents per liter, it's a big jump for people. So there is a lot of issues around that. So it's going to be pain on pain because now we've got no subsidy. We've got a floating exchange rate that's probably going to influence inflation because the value of the naira has dropped. So import costs will rise. But at the same time, there's no cushion for because of there's no fuel subsidy, so fuel might get even more expensive. So it's an interesting thing that the president said is that Nigerians should bear the cost to save the country from going under. So I wonder if this is a little bit of forecasting or kind of a playing down, sort of preparing people's minds for more pain ahead. Hopefully this pain will be justified by a better economy within the next couple of years. It's going to be interesting because it's not very clear whether all these policies will bring foreign investment. This is one of the key things that all these policies are trying to do, is to make Nigeria a place where foreign investors are comfortable to come in. So even though the president is saying by getting rid of the subsidy, they'll have more money to put into investment, into households, into building things that matter to people, it's still not very clear that they have the cash to do that, plus also pay off their debts, because the previous government also did a lot of borrowing. And as we know, the US dollar has gone up in value. Most of Nigeria's debts are in the US dollar. So it's a bit of a puzzle how this is going to be in the next few years. But I think what they are trying to do is trying to give more confidence to all this, to global investors to come into Nigeria. They're trying to set the stage for growth that will be long-term and long-lasting, because at the moment, the way they were doing it with fixed exchange rates, a fuel subsidy that was funding consumption rather than production, all these things were sort of giving us a false sense of okay economic performance. But it might be the case that by removing these things, there might be pain for the next couple of years, but better outcomes for the future. So it really comes down to how this new government will manage the economy. If they manage this economy well, Nigerians might not feel pain for very long, particularly given that Nigeria is an oil-producing nation. If they can get the oil sector ramping up very quickly, if they can get other sectors like agriculture, because Nigeria's got a lot of arable land, and get that moving, they could see their fortunes change, not within 4 years, but within maybe 2 or so years. I don't know, but hopefully it's sooner rather than later, because this is a lot of pain that people are experiencing that is making the standard of living fall. And look, Nigeria doesn't have a very high minimum wage. People don't earn a lot, and inflation has been in double digits. So within a year, what used to be $10 could be double or triple the price that it was. So that's crazy if people's wages are not rising to that same level. So another story I want to pick up on, which was very interesting to me, is in Kenya. So there's been this thing happening in Kenya about tea pickers destroying machines that have been replacing them. So the tea industry in Kenya has been mechanizing, putting robots, AI, that sort of thing, to pick the tea leaves. One of the things within the tea industry in Kenya is that about 50% of or more of the cost of production of tea is due to labor. So if, as any businessman will find a way to cut costs so they can have a higher profit margin. And in this case, that cost cutting comes at the expense of jobs. So the people who have been working in that industry have been fighting against that and burning and damaging the equipment in that sector, in the hopes that it will change the way the tea industry operates. If you are a business person thinking about this globally, if other countries are going towards that AI, robotics, mechanization pathway of how they produce things like, particularly if you're competing with other tea manufacturers, if they go that and make their profit margins higher, they can compete and push out Lipton, who's got a major, who operate in this sector quite significantly in Kenya. Those other competitors in other countries could push out Lipton and erode their market share in the tea industry. So for Lipton, having these robots doing the picking makes sense for them in terms of a long-term investment and long-term sustainability of their business. But at the cost of the rural workers losing their incomes and having also social consequences for this Kenyan region, which is generally going to be quite poor. So it's a painful time because I can understand that they want to limit this. They're trying to adopt a 60-40 rule for mechanization, but it's not going to really work, because maybe one of the things that might happen is that Lipton might say this rule, after a while they might adopt it, but after a while they see that the industry is changing, that they're not being able to compete in that sector. They might just shut it down and move away. I think one of the solutions that could be useful, but needs a lot of the policymakers in Kenya to be on top of this, is that one of the things that they could do is find new players to come into that tea industry, to pick up those jobs, to start new tea farms that focus on producing tea that's handpicked and made sustainably in a way that commands higher prices in the market. Because really, someone could spin a story to say, hey, our tea is harvested by people or in these rural low-income areas. By you buying this product, which is high quality, you're also supporting the local community and helping those people stay out of poverty and that sort of story. So give it a bit of a spin about how, buying a tea product picked by people versus a tea product that's picked by machine makes the world a better place. And if you are able to sell the story, I think they can make good money and can support those tea workers. So what I'm trying to say is that having a law that limits mechanization is not a really useful tool. I think what they need to do here is more diversify and find other ways to make the sector more niche and more premium, that can command higher prices within places like Europe, Australia, the US, UK, and the like. And as also adding to pain to misery is that Kenya's tea exports have also dropped by 26% in the last quarter because of the civil war in Sudan. So apparently in Sudan is one of the top 5 export destinations for Kenyan tea. And the strife there, as you can see, is still ongoing, and it's had a negative impact on the Kenyan tea industry. Tea is one of the big exports for Kenya, and at the moment we know that Kenya is struggling with raising revenue. It's facing a debt issue as well. So this is not great news for an industry that's for a country that's trying to raise revenue to keep up with its debts. So one of the things that makes me upset about this is that we can clearly see that as Africans we're linked, and having an African continent that is peaceful and sustainable and works for all is good for all, because if one of our other countries hurt, we also hurt. But with that said, I think the thing that the Kenyan industry could also, the Kenyan government could do, or the Kenyan tea industry bodies could do, is find other markets to access with this tea that they have. So really, I think the Kenyan tea sector might need to diversify where it sends exports. But the thing with that strategy is that it takes a while for your tea to be taken up by other industries. It's not that fast, Having a trade agreement doesn't just happen overnight. It's not a call away. So I think the way this sector will survive is by diversifying to having a more premium tea industry that is having tea picked by people and marketed as a socially sustainable good and environmentally sustainable good and all that sort of marketing jazz. And also, hopefully Sudan will get out of this war quickly, and hopefully the EU can do something to bring peace to this region and get the commerce happening sooner rather than later, because it's not just Kenya's tea industry that's being decimated by this war. Probably other industries are, and let alone Sudan's own economy being decimated by this war that's happening. So that's it, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video and this quick breakdown into the news of the week that I thought would be interesting for you guys to get an economist's perspective on it. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the like button and hit subscribe and so that you can be kept updated about future videos like this. So I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye.